At an intimate dinner inside South Korea's presidential palace, the nation's spy chief poured his president a glass of wine, then took out his pistol and shot him to death. On October 26, 1979, a country's protector became its assassin. This is the story of the most shocking political assassination of the 20th century. The story starts with Japan's colonization of Korea in 1917. That same year, Park Chung-hee was born into a poor farming family in Gumi, North Gyeongsang Province. Park grew up learning Japanese in school and living under a system that treated Koreans as second-class citizens. As a young man, he briefly trained to be a teacher, but everything changed during World War II, when Japan expanded its military conscription to include Koreans. In 1942, Park volunteered, enrolling in the Manchukuo Imperial Army Academy in Japanese-occupied Manchuria. When Japan surrendered in 1945, Korea was liberated, but not united. The South was placed under US military administration and the North under Soviet control. Without a formal military to serve in, Park found his way into newly forming South Korean army. By the time the Korean War broke out in 1950, Park was part of the officer corps fighting against the North's invasion. But it wasn't battlefield glory or political popularity that brought Park Chung-hee to power. After years of authoritarian rule under Syngman Rhee, South Korea had reached its breaking point. The 1960 student-led April Revolution forced Rhee to resign. But what followed wasn't stability. In 1961, South Korea was still drowning in corruption and instability. The economy was in ruins. Political trust was zero. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more coming for you. Now a major general, Park led a bloodless military coup. Tanks rolled into Seoul, politicians were arrested, the media was censored. Park took control and called it a military revolution. He promised it was temporary, just a caretaker government until democracy could be re-established. That promise did not last. By 1963, Park shed the uniform, ran as a civilian, and won the presidency. From then on, he ran the country like a CEO who did not believe in debates. Growth became the mission, and it came fast. His regime poured investment into heavy industries, struck deals with Japan, courted US support, and leaned hard on centralized planning. By the 1970s, South Korea's economy was booming. The term miracle on the Han River was being used seriously. But behind the numbers was a system locked down by surveillance, censorship, and violence. Park's National Intelligence Service, the KCIA, was keeping tabs on artists, students, journalists, and politicians. Dissent was not tolerated. Protests were crushed. Newspapers were filtered. The national security law gave the regime sweeping powers to silence opposition. And it worked until 1970s. Public frustration started to grow fast. Park still wouldn't blink. In 1972, he imposed the Yushin Constitution, which gave him emergency powers, indefinite terms, and near total control. It was legally binding authoritarianism. A major part of this machinery was Kim Jae-gyu, a military officer who rose through the ranks alongside Park Chung-hee, shaped by the same hierarchy. Park trusted him enough to appoint him to key positions, first as army commander, then as Minister of Construction, and eventually as the director of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency. But by the time Kim took over the KCIA in 1976, the job had somewhat changed. The agency had turned into an internal security empire, more focused on crushing domestic opposition than collecting foreign intelligence. Kim had, of course, inherited a vast surveillance apparatus, a torture network, and a political weapon that operated with few limits. But he also inherited a new rival, Jae-gyu. Jae-gyu was the head of presidential security, a bodyguard with the president's full trust. But over time, Cha's influence outgrew his title. He began handpicking who got to see the president, setting the agenda, and even dictating how the KCIA operated. He treated Kim like a subordinate, and Park allowed it. 1979, the global oil crisis had hit exports, inflation was rising, students, workers, and intellectuals, everybody was organizing in ways that had never been seen since the early 1960s. In the city of Busan, what began as student demonstrations against authoritarian rule turned into citywide riots. The government responded in the only way it knew. Martial law was declared. Troops were deployed. And Kim, despite running the KCIA, he found himself shut out of key decisions. Jae-gyu always seemed to bypass him. October 26, 1979, Seoul, a Friday night. President Park Chung-hee was at his safe house inside the Blue House compound in Gumjeong-dong. Kim Jae-gyu, Jae-gyu, and a few others were on the guest list. The menu may have been predictable, but Kim's intentions were not. By the time he entered the compound that evening, his mind was made up. Hidden in his waistband was a semi-automatic Walther PPK pistol. Nearby, his subordinates waited, each of them armed. Dinner began around 6 p.m. The conversation turned to nationwide unrest. Park demanded harsher measures. Cha cited Cambodia's killing fields to justify mass suppression. Kim was being grilled from every side. Humiliated, he excused himself to the restroom, but instead, he fetched his pistol from across the compound. Around 7:40 p.m., he re-entered the dining room. He first shot Jae-gyu in the arm, and then Park in the chest. Before he could shoot the third bullet, the pistol jammed, forcing Kim to retrieve a Smith & Wesson Model 36 revolver. He shot Cha in the abdomen, and then Park in the head, execution style. Kim's subordinates shot the remaining bodyguards and the presidential chauffeur for a total of 6 killed. Kim did not flee. He moved to the nearby KCIA building to coordinate with Army Chief Jeong Seung-hwa, falsely claiming Park was still alive and urging martial law. By 12:30 a.m. on October 27, military forces lured Kim outside and arrested him. The motive behind the assassination has been under debate for decades. Some argue that Kim feared the regime was nearing collapse, and that Jae-gyu's growing influence was pushing South Korea into irreversible authoritarian violence. Others believe it was a crisis of ego. Kim had been repeatedly sidelined, stripped of influence, and publicly humiliated by Cha's dominance. For 18 years, Park Chung-hee had ruled with absolute authority, but on the morning of October 27, 1979, that had changed. The government called it an unexpected incident, but by the end of the day, everybody knew the president had been assassinated. Not by rebels, not by foreign agents, but by his own intelligence chief. In the immediate aftermath, Prime Minister Choi Kyu-ha stepped in as acting president. After all, according to the Yushin Constitution, he was next in line. But in reality, he held no real power. One man in particular seized this opportunity, General Chun Do-hwan. After the assassination, he was assigned to lead the official investigation, but on December 12, he made his own move. Under the cover of the night, he ordered the arrest of the Army Chief of Staff, General Jeong Seung-hwa, an act that defied the chain of command. As for Kim Jae-gyu, he did not flee, he did not resist arrest. But from the moment he was taken into custody, he admitted what he had done, but insisted that it was not murder. He argued that the country was on the brink of collapse under Park's leadership. The courts, however, did not buy it. On January 28, 1980, he was convicted of murder and treason. All his appeals were denied. On May 24, 1980, Kim Jae-gyu was executed by hanging at Seoul Detention Center. He was 54 at the time. His final words, reportedly, were, "I hope my death will be a cornerstone for the restoration of democracy in this country."